Hi guys, my name is Jonathan Hopp. I'm from Coding Your Career, and today we're going to build a budget tracker, as you see here. It's going to be pretty simple. We're going to use vanilla JavaScript, HTML, and CSS to make an interactive application that will keep track of expenses. Okay, not too many bells and whistles. I want to keep this tutorial within a certain time limit. So, for example, let's go ahead and use this. Let's say I got macaroni and cheese, and it cost me $3, and it's part of the groceries. I can put them into different categories: rent, groceries, entertainment. And then if I hit add expense, notice that I have macaroni and cheese for $3 for groceries. I could also put other kinds of expenses. Let's say I got I don't know, headphones. Okay, my headphones cost $25 and they're for entertainment, and then I add that expense. As you can see, as I add more expenses, they'll continue down the line, and notice that each different category has a different color associated with it. So this you can all do with vanilla JavaScript. We don't need all that fancy React and all the other stuff that people talk about nowadays. Now, if your goal is to become a full stack engineer, then learning a framework like React, Angular, Vue, or any of the other ones is going to be pretty much fundamental. However, I do think that working with vanilla JavaScript is good because at least you kind of understand certain basic concepts of web development. Okay, how to make a web page respond to what the user is doing, how to deal with classes and styles, thinking about visual logic. All right, so if you're a backend developer, you're probably pretty good with algorithms and solving math and things like that, but understanding UI logic has its own kind of little quirks to it. All right, so this is what we're going to build, and I'm going to go over different things like targeting, events, validation, form submission. I want to make certain I'm clear from the outset. This will not be everything there is to know about vanilla JavaScript, nor will I be able to have the time to go exhaustively into every single nook and cranny of what you can do. So the idea is that to give you a basis, a project that you can work on while watching me through this video, and then after we're done, I will give you some tips and like places to look into and ideas for how to expand on this. All right, doing projects is probably one of the best ways to get better at coding, and so you could think of this as I'm helping you like bootstrap a project, and then after we've done the basic project, I would love it if you took this code and you just like ran with it. So this code is available online, so you can see the finished product and everything I did, and then again from there I would love it if you took the basic code and then just went wild with it with all your own ideas and how you would like this application to work. Well, enough about the introduction. Let's actually get to working using HTML, CSS, and vanilla JavaScript. So first things first, we need to create the HTML and the CSS to create the basic forms. Let's get into that. All right, let's get to it, and let's build this budget app. So I've got three files: app.js, index.html, and styles.css. And we're going to break up the CSS, HTML, and JavaScript all in different files. And this is something I would recommend because, well, when these programs get to be pretty big, you're not going to want to put everything all together. It'd be very hard to read and hard to maintain. I'm also using Visual Studio Code, which is free and easy to download. So that's what I'll be using for the entirety of the course. So if you want to follow along, I suggest you go download it so you can keep up with us. So I have some basic HTML here in VS Code. You can actually, when you make an HTML file and you do exclamation point, hit tab, it will do some basic HTML for you, which is pretty nice. So here, what we're going to do is I'm going to make a container, a div, ID equals container. Well, actually, let's make it class equals container. All right, and what this is going to do is it will allow me to sort of like put everything in a line. So I'm going to put all my budget stuff in a line. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to have h1 budget tracker. Okay, so this is for our budget app. And we are going to have a form tag, and I'm going to give this an ID of budget form. So for IDs, you may have noticed that I'm going to put IDs on a lot of different things. Let me make some room here. And that's for mainly because I want to be able to deal with them more easily later. An ID should be unique in the HTML file, meaning no two elements should have the same ID. Now, of course, you can break this rule yourself, and I don't recommend it. You'll see later on why. So we're going to have a label, and this will be for the description of the expense that the person would like to add to their budget. And then we're going to do an input tag, which will be text. ID will be description, and the placeholder will be expense description. Okay, and then there's a self-sealing tag. So we'll do another label for the amount. So how much are they spending on said expense? So input type equals number. ID equals amount, placeholder equals expense amount, how much are you spending? And then for the last thing, we're going to need a drop down so they can tell us which category this expense falls into. So this will be category, categories, and then we'll do a select. So select is for drop downs, and we're going to give that an ID of category. And for each option, we're going to put a value. So we'll do like groceries for the first option. So remember, the value attribute is going to be how we know which of the things that they pick from this drop down. The actual text inside the option tag is not going to cut it. You could use it, but it's a little bit more, it's a little harder. It's a little easier to use value. So we're going to do rent. And what else are we going to do? We're going to do entertainment. So like fun stuff. Entertainment. Okay, that's going to be our drop down. And at the end, we'll have a button. And I guess we'll call this like ID equals add expense. Okay, and we'll do add expense. We're going to change this button later. We're going to keep it nice and simple for right now. And so after this, we will also, outside the form, we'll have an unordered list. And its ID will be expense list. And this is where we're going to list our expenses later on when we have them. Okay, so we got everything going so far. We will need to bring in the CSS file and the JavaScript file. So for the CSS file, we can come up to the head tag. I'm going to rename this to be expense calculator for the title of our web page. I'm going to link the CSS by using the link tag rel equals style sheet href is equal to styles.css. All right, that will be, this line will bring the CSS file into the HTML file. And then at the very end, after all my HTML is said and done, the last thing before the end body tag will be the script. And I'll do app.js. So that will bring in the JavaScript file, and this will bring in the CSS file. And I want to, this code is available on GitHub. I know that I'm kind of blasting through a lot of the beginning stuff. So if you ever feel behind, you can always pause the screen, or you can head over to GitHub and look at the code. All right, so I'm going to hold this up. You can pause the screen if you're typing along. That way you don't feel too rushed. Okay, so I've got everything here. And then I already went ahead and made the CSS. So let's take a look at that. Okay, so this is styles.css, and I've got a, I made the container display flex direction column. I will have a future video about Flexbox. If you're not very familiar with Flexbox, you don't really have to be for this tutorial. I'm just using it to make things look a little neater. I have form, which was display flex with columns so that all the different form fields would stack on top of one another. And then I have some CSS for the inputs, the drop down, the buttons, hovering over the button, and then the unordered list and the list item. This will not really be useful for the moment, but the other stuff will be. So I'll leave this up in case you want to pause the video and put the CSS stuff in yourself. Again, it's also available on GitHub. So the container, the form, and then the buttons for then the input, select, button, and button hover. All right, so just take your time. There's absolutely no rush. We've got the CSS. Let's take a look and see what we've got so far. All right, here we are. We've got our budget tracker, and it says at the top, and it's got a drop down. It's got some, boxes for us to put some things in, but it doesn't do anything. And that's kind of the thing about JavaScript. JavaScript gives life to the web page. HTML and CSS by themselves are great. Like you can, make your web page look pretty and position things however you want to, but it doesn't do anything. So what JavaScript is going to help us do is respond to what the user does and to get information about what the user is doing. So for example, I want to know, what does the person type into this box, like new Air Jordans, right? How do I know that they bought new Air Jordans? How do I know their new Air Jordans were $500 and that it goes into the entertainment category? How am I going to capture all of this information and then update the screen with this new information? JavaScript is going to help me do that. So in order for us to build up to being able to use this expense tracker, what we're going to do is we're going to first learn how to target things. Okay, targeting basically means, hey, I'm interested in this part of the screen, this input box, this drop down, this button. I'm interested in these different parts, and I want to be able to target them so that I can do stuff with them. So for example, grab information out of them. What did the person type in this box? What thing did the person select in this drop down? When they click the button, what do I do when they click the button? JavaScript's got that all handled. And the first thing we gotta learn is how to target things, how to say which thing on the screen you're actually interested in. So let's learn how to do that. All right, so if you remember, targeting is basically us telling JavaScript, hey, I'm interested in this part of the web page, so I want you to find it and grab it for me so I can do something with it. So let's go to our app.js, and I hope that you put the script source equals app.js at the bottom because that's going to be necessary to bring the JavaScript file into the HTML file. And let's go ahead and start working here. All right, so this JavaScript file will run as soon as the web page loads. So anything you put in here will just go. So let's learn how to do some targeting. All right, so we're going to do targeting. Okay, and let's do that. So let's kind of look at the HTML here. The easiest way to target something is by its ID. And remember, I said that no two elements on the page should have the same ID, right? It should be unique throughout the entire HTML page. And the reason for that is because when we get element by ID, we're looking for a specific element. So for example, this form has an ID of budget form. This input tag has an ID of description. So what we could tell JavaScript is we have to kind of tell JavaScript like how should it look for something, because there could be a ton of things on this web page, and JavaScript's like, listen, dude, I need you to tell me what it is you're looking for. Since we're looking for something by ID, it should be fairly simple. There's only one thing with the ID of budget form, so it should be able to clearly find this form. So how do we do that in JavaScript? Well, let's go target by ID first. Okay, we're going to do const form. It's just a variable equals document.getElementById, and then we're going to go do expense form. Okay, this is probably the simplest way to go get things off of a web page. Give them an ID, then do document.getElementById, and then the ID of the element you want to get. Notice how expense-form here matches exactly, okay, what is, budget form. Okay, see how easy that is to do? Okay, budget form matches exactly, okay, what's here. So that way JavaScript will be able to find it. If you have any sort of misspellings, then it will not find it. So, keep watch over that. So I'm going to console.log the form variable, and let's go see what happens. Okay, here I'm at the budget tracker, and I'm going to hit F12 and go to console, and notice it gives me the form. Okay, so document.getElementById found the form. It has the ID of budget form, and now I get everything in it. So you see like literally all the HTML that's inside the form. I grabbed the entire form, which is pretty cool. All right, so anything with an ID, you can use document.getElementById. You might be wondering what this document thing is, all right? And that's essentially the document object model. The document is essentially, very simply, you can think of it as the web page. Okay, there's the web page as you write it initially, right? The web page is going to look like this initially. And then the document object model, that's like the clay. You can mold that like clay with your hands using JavaScript. Okay, that's kind of the easiest way I like to think about it. All right, so you don't have to use getElementById. There's other ways you could target things by their ID. So we can do const category select is equal to document. Everything begins with document. And we can use query selector. And then we can do quotes hashtag category. Okay, why hashtag? Well, if you remember your CSS, okay, that we target classes by using dot, right? And then we target IDs by using hashtag. So here you would target it, but this, and notice how there's a hashtag here for targeting the drop down by its ID, whereas there's no hashtag in getElementById. That's because getElementById is pretty direct, right? It's telling you specifically what it's doing. Query selector can get multiple things different ways, and so we're telling it, I specifically want a thing with a category of ID, and that's why we put the hashtag here. So I'm going to do console.log category select, and then let's go ahead and go to the web page and take a look. Okay, there we go. There's our select. And notice when you hover over it in the console, it will like highlight it will highlight it on the page. Okay, so you know what you're dealing with. All right, if you look inside, it's got all of our options, and that's pretty cool. All right, so now I hope you are starting to understand what targeting means. All right, I'm literally saying, grab me this part of the page, please. Okay, and we can do that by ID. So if you want to get things by their ID, you can do getElementById, or you can use query selector, but don't forget the hashtag, because the hashtag means get the thing by ID. Now, what about classes, Jonathan, or tags? Like, what if I don't have an ID? What if I want to target things by their tag or by their class name? So, for example, we have a container, all right? So let's go ahead and do that. We can do const container is equal to document. Everything begins with document. And then what we'll do is get elements by class name. And then we'll put container. And I'm going to console.log the container. All right, so get elements by class name. Notice this is plural, right? Get elements by class name, because more than one thing on a page could have the same class name. In fact, that's the point of classes, is so that multiple different elements can share the same class. I'm going to go ahead and comment out these other two so we can see the console log a little more clearly. Notice that this is an HTML collection. It's not an array. It's not an array. It's an HTML collection. And inside, we've got the container. Okay, so, oops, let me go do that again. Let me go back to the console. And there we go, div.container, length is 1. So this could hold multiple things that have the same class. So for example, we could have maybe those options. Let's maybe add a class of the options. So here, maybe these options all have the same class, like class is equal to category option. And I'm going to give all of these the same class. So I'm just going to copy and paste it. Okay, twice, there we go. So now all the options have the same class. And let's head back to the JavaScript file and let's make a change here. Okay, you also could use query selector. So maybe we can do options is equal to document.query selector all, because there's going to be more than one. And then we're going to do dot, and then I already forgot the class I gave it, category option. Category option. And then we're going to console.log options. All right, and I'm going to go ahead and comment this out, and let's take a look and see what we got. Okay, here we have a node list. All right, so again, not an array, and we've got multiple ones, option.category option. So as you can see, we get, if we want to get more than one thing, we can get more than one thing as long as they share the same class name. And so you may be thinking to yourself, Jonathan, why isn't there just like one way to get something, right? Like I got query selector all for multiple things, and then I've got this get elements by class name. Like what happens if I put category option in here? Well, let's try that out. Okay, so let's say I'm getting all elements by the class name category option, and then when I go back to the page, oops, category option, there we go. Okay, then I get HTML collection with 3 things. So really, like, you get to kind of choose. It's pretty the API is pretty flexible in how you get things. So you can use query selector, but with query selector, you'll notice you have to put the hashtag for ID or the dot for classes, just like you would in CSS. Whereas for get element by ID and get elements by class name, you don't have to put any sort of special symbol. You just have to put the thing you're looking for, whether it's an ID or it's a class. So that's just little details you have to remember. What if you don't have a class or an ID that you're looking for, right? Like maybe you just care about what tag it is. Is it a list item tag? Is it an option tag? Is it an input tag? Well, you can do that too. Let's say we want to get all the input tags. Document dot, and then we got to do get elements, okay, by tag name. All right. So as you can see, there's already like a bunch of different built-in methods. And then I'll do that, and then all I got to do is say, I guess, input. Okay, I want to get all of my inputs. Console.log, input tags. Okay, sweet. And then let's take a look at this. Okay, there we go. There are inputs, okay, our description and our amount. All right, so now this kind of begs the question, like, Jonathan, what's the best way to do this? If you have control over the HTML, what I mean by that is you can change the HTML at will. You get to edit the HTML file however you want. Then that means then you can select IDs, class names, and things like that for your convenience in targeting them. If you don't have control of the HTML file, meaning you're not the one writing it and you cannot edit it, there are certain circumstances that will be like that. Then you're going to have to be able to, understand which of these functions to use, because you will not be able to make everything more convenient for yourself. But to quickly review, we have get element by ID to target an element looking for a specific ID. The query selector you can also use, but by putting hashtag in front of the ID, don't forget the hashtag. You can get elements, plural, by class name, by putting in the class name, or query selector all, but don't forget the dot, okay, because you want to target things by their class. Or you can get elements by tag name, in which case you get all the elements you're looking for by their tag. Now what we're going to do next is we're going to take all of these different ways to target things, and now once we target them, we're going to get the information out of them. So for example, when someone types something in a box, like when they type something here in description, how do I know what they typed? Well, I can target this description box and I can grab the value, okay, of what they typed in. I'm going to show you how to do that next. All right, now that we know how to target things, let's go ahead and start targeting the stuff we care about. So I would care about if someone were to put in something in this box, in the amount box, or selects a drop down from the category. And so I'm going to try to target these three things because they have things I care about. We'll talk about the button in a moment. So let's go to our code, and step one, target the elements on the screen you care about. So we're going to do const form equals document.getElementById budget form, and then const, and then let's do description input equals document.getElementById description. So these variable names, remember variables are just whatever we want to name them. They could be whatever we want. Document.getElementById amount, and the last one will be the actual category select. Document.getElementById category. Now, you notice all these are getElementById because when I made the HTML, if you remember, I gave them all IDs because it was convenient. That way, it's very convenient for me to target everything. All right, so like, how do we actually show what the person typed into the box? So we're going to use this value property. All right. So when it gets the element, it will save in the variable description input. Notice how it's an HTML element, and then it has a value property, which will say what the person typed in there. Right now, the value is absolutely nothing, right? So if let's make it even more obvious. Okay. So I'll just put the value of description is, and then I'll just put them together. All right. And then let's look at it. Okay, and as you can see, there's absolutely nothing. Now, even if I type something in, nothing's going to happen. That's because, remember, when the page loads, it runs the JavaScript automatically. So when the page loaded, there was nothing in the description box. So there's nothing to see here. Well, Jonathan, I still don't know what value means because I can't see anything. Well, let's give it an initial value. Let's go to the HTML, we'll go to the description, and we'll put value is equal to, I don't know, Nikes. Okay, well, like Nikes, whatever. Let's go look now. Here we go. It says Nike. The value description is, and then Nike. So as you can see, whatever the person typed into the box, we can grab the value of it. All right. And so that means that once we target the thing, we get to know what's happening with the thing, right? Like, did they type, what's its current value? Like, what did they type? Which thing did they select? Okay. So that's the value of targeting. All right. But the thing is, the problem we're incurring now is that, well, I don't really want to get the value of it right when the page loads because that doesn't do me any good. I want to grab the value of those input boxes when someone submits the form. And that's what we're going to get into next. But hopefully now you kind of understand more about what value means. All right. Value allows us to get like what the person typed into the box. Same thing with the category select. So if we do category select, if you're wondering what that looks like. So I'll put category select. And then we'll do the category select value, and let's see what we get with that one. Okay, here you can see that it's groceries because the currently select the first thing in the list is groceries. All right, and so the value of the drop down will change as someone does something. But like I said before, right now our getting the value is good, but we don't want to actually really do anything until the person submits this form, until they fill everything out, and then they submit the form, and then we can actually show them an expense. So let's do a little bit of preparation for that. What I'd like to be able to do is have an array for expenses. Okay, so I'm going to get rid of these console logs, and I'm going to have let expenses equals, and we'll just have a blank array. All right, and then what we're going to learn next is what's called an event. So what we want to do is we want to have the expense list update when someone fills out this form, when someone submits the form. So they fill out all the different things, they use the drop down, and they hit the button to tell us, hey, I'm ready to add an expense to my list. All right, we want to have the web page respond to the user doing something, and that is an event, and we're going to learn that next. All right, now let's do something interesting. Let's do an event. An event is basically whenever the user types something into a box or clicks on something or double clicks something, drags something. Basically, the user interacting with the website is an event. And events basically tell us, okay, what is the user doing and what do I want to do in response to the user doing that? When the user clicks a button, what do I want to do? When the user inputs some text into a text field, what do I want to do? So let's get into that. and how we can make the JavaScript basically react to what the person's doing with the web page. So let's take this button we've got here. I've got this add expense button, and I gave it an ID called add expense. So let's go ahead and target that at the top. So I'll do const submit button is equal to document.getElementById, and I call this a submit add expense. So let's go add expense. Remember, when we target things, we got to watch our spelling, everything. It's got to be exactly what the ID is. And with a little practice, it shouldn't be any problem. Now, I need to do what's called an event listener. An event listener is essentially something that's going to look at a certain element on the page, and it's going to sit there and listen to see if a user does a certain action. So essentially, it will wait. It will wait forever until the user does something. So I want to attach the event listener to the submit button. So I'll do submit button.add event listener. The event listener takes two arguments. First, what is the user doing? Like, what do you care about the user doing? Clicking is a string. So what this event listener is doing, it says when someone clicks the submit button, when someone clicks this button specifically on the page, what do you want me to do? Okay, not double click, not type something, not hover, specifically click. Okay, cool. Well, what do I want you to do? Well, here we could put a function. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to write a function that's going to happen when the person clicks the button. So I'm going to do function submit button click. We'll just do submit expense. I'll name it that. Okay. And we'll say, okay, cool. When someone clicks on this button, it will run the submit expense function. Okay. This is like mousetrap. When one thing happens, that will cause the other thing to happen. Now, I don't know when the user is going to click the button. I have no idea. And that's what the event listener is for. It's going to sit there. It's going to listen until the person does it. All right, cool. For right now, we'll just put console.log submit add expense button clicked. Okay, we'll keep it nice and simple. All right, let's take a look at our work. Well, that's bizarre. We have this message here saying add expense button was clicked, but we just opened up the web page. Maybe if I refresh it. Oh, geez, it's right there. It just does it. That's because we told JavaScript to actually run the function immediately. So let me show you how to fix this, okay, in case you run into this problem. Let's remove these parentheses after the word submit expense. Let's actually just pass the function itself into the event listener. And let's see if that makes any sort of change. All right, well now there's nothing. Okay, so now when I click this, it will flash. Okay, so it looks like it just does this flashing thing. Okay, if you notice, it does do add expense button clicked, but then it kind of goes away. Why does it do that? And anyways, why don't we actually like look at this form a little bit? Like when I type some stuff in and like do rent and some money and I click this button, all that stuff gets cleared immediately and the screen blinks. So what's going on? Also, another thing, I can't hit the enter button. If I hit enter over and over again right now, nothing happens. I have to actually physically click on this button for anything to happen. Well, there's a couple things we got to work out here, but hopefully you understand, okay, what's going on so far. We've added this event listener. It's specifically looking for a click, someone to click this button specifically. So we targeted the button. Then we said when someone clicks this button, run this function. And notice that there are no parentheses after this. We're not calling the function. We're passing the function in. So the function will console log something. But we've got a couple of problems we got to work out, because when I click the button, something like the screen flashes immediately and I can't hit the enter key at all. So I want to kind of improve the way that this form is working. And part of the reason is that this button is just a regular button. We're going to transform this button to be a submit button, and then we're going to learn how to submit a form, because if we think about this, all these different inputs and all this information are kind of one singular package, and I would like to deal with them as one package. And I definitely don't want that flickering thing to happen again. So let's go ahead and in the next part, I'll show you how to deal with a form. So we tried clicking the button and the screen flickered and we couldn't hit the enter button to the submit. So let's switch this around a little bit. Let's not add an event listener to the submit button. I'm going to get rid of this code and I'm going to go back to index.html, and for my button, I'm going to do inside the add an attribute type equals submit. All right. So what this will do is this will make it officially a submit button. It will submit the form. And pretty much every browser is going to know what to do when you put type equals submit on the button. Now, we're going to go back to app.js, and we've already got the form here, right? On line 2, document.getElement by ID budget form, because the form tag up here has the ID of budget form. So now what we can do is we can add an event listener to the form itself rather than just the button. Okay, I'm also going to get rid of this value here. We don't need this anymore for the description. We could just get rid of that. And so let's go ahead and add an event listener to the form. Form.addEventListener. Okay, and the event's going to be submit, not click, submit. And then we're going to run we're going to have a submit form function. We haven't written it yet, but we're going to write it right now. So function submit form. All right, and then what we're going to do is we're going to pass in an event. What the heck is an event, Jonathan? Well, we were talking about the user, clicking stuff and submitting a form, but what is this event variable on line 12? What does that represent? So what we're going to do is we're going to console log it and take a look. Okay, so let's go ahead and console log it. So I'm saying when someone submits the form, then this function is going to run. And this is going to fire, this submit event is going to fire when someone clicks a button that has type equals submit. Okay, and your browser will be able to hook everything up for you. Okay, let's give it a try. We'll click add expense. Okay, it did flicker for a bit, so we still have that flickering option, but notice that I can click on it, right, and it will submit the form. Now, hitting enter will be only for certain browsers. Okay, so it'll still have this flickering thing, so we need to I kind of want to get rid of that for a moment. So let's go back, and let's actually, because we can't see the event, right, we have no idea what the event is. So what I want to do is before the console log, event.preventDefault. Okay, event.preventDefault. Okay, so the default behavior of a form when you submit it is for it to clear everything out and refresh the page. Okay, the page gets refreshed. I don't know if I want that, okay, because I want to be able to see certain things. Okay, so now that that event.preventDefault is in, let's click this button. Oh, look, it's a submit event. It looks like the event is an object, okay? So whenever you actually do something on a web page, it actually creates an event object that's filled with information about the event. So let's take a look at it. So, wow, there's a ton of information. So it knows the form with an ID of budget form because it has this hashtag here. It looks like it's trusted. There's all these other things with the event phase, default, prevented, true, source element, submitter. Okay, you see this button, add expense. So hashtag add expense is the thing that submits it. Wow, that's a lot of stuff. Okay, so it looks like the event itself is a bundle of information about what happened. So when I click the button, JavaScript was like, oh, okay, you submitted this form. I know what information I would like to bundle together in order for, the programmer to have this information. Now, a lot of this information in this event object is not something that you're going to really use all that often, but if you did want to use it, it's there for you. So what we have now is we've have this submit event, right, which fires whenever I hit this button. So see, I click the button, there it goes again. Again, I hit enter. Okay, I hit enter, and it keeps going. All right. So I can submit this form by clicking on the button, or I can submit this form by clicking enter. And that's because I have this event. Okay, I have the combination of making the button of type equals submit, and then also having the submit event listener on the form itself. Now let's do something a little bit more interesting. I've got this description, input, amount, and category select. So now what I'm going to do is let's console log what the person typed in. Description input dot value, and let's console.log amount input dot value, and let's go ahead and do category select dot value, because I want to do something with the information that the user put into the form. So let's go ahead and take a look at that. All right, I'm going to say I got some Air Jordans, and they were $500, and they are definitely for entertainment. They're not grocery or rent. See? I was able to get the value of this first box, the value of this amount, then the value from, okay, the categories. If I change it, say, okay, rent, I do monthly rent is, I don't know, whatever it is. See? I actually am able to grab that information from the different inputs whenever I submit this form by clicking this button or hitting enter. And notice that they don't go away, all right? So they don't when the screen doesn't flicker and reset every time I submit the form. And remember, if we don't have this prevent default, let me go ahead and get rid of it for you. Okay, and let's see what it does. Okay, I don't have that there. Air Jordan 500. Okay, entertainment. See how you probably saw the console log just barely, but then everything else got reset. It refreshed the screen. The default behavior of a form is to refresh the screen. So to prevent that, that's why we have this event.preventDefault. So I have an event listener on the form, okay, the form itself, where I had the form tag here. And then I said, okay, cool. When someone submits the form, run the submit form function. I have the function here. It takes in an event. The event is the submitting of the form. I say don't refresh the screen when the form is submitted because I don't want it to happen. And then I want to grab all the values from the different boxes. And now we can do the fun stuff where we're going to actually display what they put in the form on the screen as an actual expense. And we're going to do that next. All right, so I've gone ahead and I've created some variables that will hold the information that the user will input into the form instead of just console logging everything. So const description equals description input dot value. Remember that the description input variable is the actual input that we have from before. Remember, we targeted everything first so that we can have them for later. All right, so now when someone submits the form, I'll grab all the values from the description box, the amount box, and the category box, and let's go ahead and make it an object. Let's package these three pieces of data and put them into an object. I'm going to call it expense, and remember, we can just, in JavaScript, you can just basically make an object by doing curly braces. So description is the description, and the amount is the amount, and the category is the category. All right. Now, again, some of you are saying, well, can't you just combine all these into one thing? Yes, you could. I want to show you step by step how to do stuff. All right. So you understand a little bit better. Okay. And then we're going to do expenses, that array we made earlier, and we're going to push, okay, this expense in. All right. So we're going to take this object and add it to our array. And I'll show you in a moment why we do that. So we're going to do form.reset because I want them to, oops, not reset. Come on, man. Reset, because sometimes IntelliSense doesn't want to work with me. All right, so that will clear out all the boxes. Like when I submit the form, I will then that way, basically, like when you submit the form, it'll clear out all the boxes so they can type something new. And I'm also going to console.log the expenses array so we can see what's in it as we go along. All right, so we've got the submit form. We're going to grab all their data and we're going to put it into an expense object and then take that object and put it into an array. Let's see this at work. All right, we're into Nike and $200, and it's definitely entertainment. All right, so we look in our array. There we go, Nike, 200. Okay, category is entertainment. All right, so we can see all of our data. And notice how the form reset, right? There's no, what I typed in here is gone. And so what I'll do is I'll put monthly rent is 1,000, and we'll go to rent. Okay, and now notice that there's two expenses in my array. All right, so there we go. I've got Nike monthly rent, and every time I submit the form, it will reset, so it's easier for me to put new information in. We'll do, I don't know, Nutella, and it's $5, and it's groceries, and now I have three expenses. Okay, so every time I submit the form, it takes all the data from each of the boxes. So the description box, the amount box, and the category dropdown, packages them together into an object, like you can see here, and then adds that object to the array. So every time I make an expense, it adds the data to the array. This will make it easier for the next part. Okay, but you're like, Jonathan, I don't see any expenses below. Where are we going to see the expenses? Well, what we're going to have to do is we're going to have to create some HTML and add it to the page. So instead of like basically getting information from the stuff that's already on the screen, we're going to have to add HTML to the screen. And we can do that. It's not that hard. What I'm going to do is I'm going to have a separate function called display expenses. Display expenses. And its job is going to be, well, I think it's pretty clear what its job is going to be. It's going to actually take all the expenses and then show them to the screen. So let's get started with that. So where am I going to show them, though? in the index.html, we have this unordered list with an ID of expense list. All right, so we're going to actually add them as list item tags, right? So what you can imagine is that we're going to put a list item and then put like description and amount and all that stuff, right? But obviously we can't write that HTML beforehand because we have no idea what this person is going to actually write for their expenses. So we're going to have to take what they write and have it insert some HTML into the pre-existing document, which we can do. It's actually fairly straightforward. All right, first we've already targeted up here, I believe. If we haven't, then we need to. So this is called expense list. Let's target it. So we're going to do const expense list equals document.getElementById by ID. Expense hyphen list. Remember, it must match exactly what the ID says. All right, cool. What we're going to do is we're going to clear out the list when we start. Okay, I'm going to make it a blank string. Jonathan, what is this inner HTML? So the inner HTML is basically the HTML inside of these tags. So they're UL tags. So what it does is it says, okay, cool, here's the HTML inside the tag. You can actually take HTML and add it. And here, let me actually demonstrate to you what this does. Instead of doing blank, let's actually put an LI tag. And you're like, Jonathan, you're writing HTML inside of a string. Yes. So the inner HTML, I'm going to add this to it, li example li. All right. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to go ahead and run display expenses from the beginning. All right. So we'll call display expenses after the form reset. Okay, we'll call this function display expenses inside the submit form. All right, let's go ahead and submit the form. Let's see what happens. Okay, I'm going to put, I don't know, borscht. We bought some borscht for $10. All right, see what happened? That wasn't there before, correct? Okay, we added HTML to the page by using inner HTML. I added an li tag. If you actually inspect this, you'll see it's the li tag we added. This was not there before. When I reset the page, it goes away. It's gone. There's no li tag there at all. But when I do inner HTML, I can actually change the HTML inside the ul tag. So that's what we're going to take advantage of, and we're going to actually add some stuff to the page now. So what we're going to do is we're going to clear out the expense list in the beginning. Okay, so that'll be blank, because every time I add an expense, right, this array is going to get bigger. So expenses array will get bigger. So I want to clear it out and then just re-show everything. So what I'll do is I'll loop through all of my expenses in my expense array. So I'll do expenses dot for each. Okay, use that for each, and then we'll say expense to represent each individual expense, and then we'll say, okay, how are we going to create the li tag though, Jonathan? Are we going to write a string, or like what are we going to do? We're going to learn about create element. So we'll do const, and we'll do, I guess I'll call this li is equal to document.createElement li. Okay, so create element literally says, hey, make me an li tag. So you have to imagine this process, all right? You won't see it on the screen as it goes until the end of all the code. But you have to imagine, okay, I got an li tag. I've made it. Okay, cool. Now, I want to take the text content of that li tag, and I want to change it to the string. So we'll do backticks, and then we'll do expense dot description, because expenses have descriptions, and then we'll do hyphen, and then we'll do expense dot amount, and then we'll do a hyphen, and then expense dot category. Okay, and this will be the content or the inside of the li tag. So you can think of it like behind the scenes, there's going to be an li tag like this in front of it, right? And then a closing tag behind it. So this will be the inside the li tag. And then we can basically just go ahead and say expense list, which again is this right here, this ul tag. And we're going to do append child, which is going to take the li tag and add it to the ul list. All right, so there's a lot going on here. So let's kind of go through it. We submit the form. We prevent the form from refreshing the page. We grab what the person typed in for the description. We grab what the person typed in for the amount, and we go to the drop down and see which category they picked. We bundle all that information into an object because objects are great for bundling related information together. We take that object and add it to our array of expenses. We are then going to reset the form so that the person can type something new in. Then we're going to run the display expenses function. The display expenses will take the expense list, which is this UL unordered list tag right here that we targeted at the beginning. It clears it out. It then goes through every expense in our array. It creates a list item element. Inside the list item element is its text content, which we are setting to this string here. We then append child. The UL tag is the parent and the list item tag is the child. What I mean by that is list item tag normally is inside the UL. You have UL and then nested inside of it you have list item. List item is the child, UL unordered list is the parent. So when we want to add a child into the parent, we're going to use append child. So let's take this out for a spin. Let's see if it works. All right, I got a flat screen TV. And it costs $2,000. That's definitely for entertainment. I hit add expense. Flat screen TV, $2,000, entertainment. Let's do another one. I'm going to say my monthly rent is, I don't know, $1,500. And I'm going to do rent. Okay, monthly rent, $1,500. I can keep doing this. I can say I got weekly groceries. That cost $200, and then I hit add expense, and there we go. And so every time I add another expense, it will show on the screen, and we'll keep going down and down and down. So now we can hopefully you're seeing what JavaScript is doing, right? Normal HTML and CSS, it would be pretty much you can't do this, okay? You can't do this kind of logic, submitting the form, grabbing the data, all that good stuff. So JavaScript is what the thing that's allowing us to do this. And so by doing this, we can now have our expenses. We can even do more interesting things. All right. But there's a lot this was probably a lot that went on. All right. The main thing you kind of need to remember is inner HTML is the HTML inside of a tag. You can then use create element, document.create element to literally create an element that you would intend to put on the page. You then say, okay, cool. This list item's text content, and these properties are just made up by the DOM API, so you just have to kind of learn them. I know there was no way for you to know out of the blue what text content was, but now that you know it, in the future you could reuse it. So list item has a text content, which we put this string in here, and then we use append child because we want to take this list item and actually put it on the page. Okay, append child actually takes our HTML that we built in JavaScript and puts it on the page. And so now we've got a form that we can submit, and then bam, it will allow us to go ahead, okay, and show a list like this. And because we're using JavaScript, we can do some more fun stuff with this. So let's kind of keep going with this project. Hopefully you've got it able to work thus far and are kind of starting to appreciate how cool JavaScript is. One thing that might make this more interesting is if these different categories were color-coded once we put the expenses in. So we can do that. But the thing is, we won't know what category it is beforehand until it actually appears on the screen. So what we'll need to do is we'll need to manipulate the CSS of these elements on the bottom here so that they appear different colors based on what category the expense belongs to. So let's go ahead and do that. Alright, so I'm in my styles.css, and let's add some CSS classes, alright, that will represent the different categories. So let's do rent expense. Okay, remember the dot is for class, so we'll do background color, and let's do some kind of red. Alright, so we'll make the rent expense red. We'll make groceries expense. Background color maybe like green, like light green. Let's see what we got. Light green. There we go. And then we'll do other expense, or what was it? We had groceries, we had rent, and we had entertainment. Entertainment expense. And then we'll go ahead, background color will be, I guess, blue. Let's do blue. All right. Or maybe like light blue, so it'll show a little bit better. Light blue. There we go. Okay, cool thing about also in VS Code is that you can type, it has this little box here, so you can actually give the exact RGB value of the color you want things to be. So again, I'm just using these colors. If you want to do something different, that is entirely up to you. All right, so now how do we apply these classes because, again, we actually don't have the HTML until it appears on the screen. Well, let's go ahead and actually add classes to our elements. And how are we going to do that, Jonathan? Actually, it's pretty simple. So what we're going to do is we're going to just go ahead and after we have the text content here, before we add the child, what we're going to do is we're going to figure out which class it belongs to. So we'll need if statements. There's three possibilities. Either it's expenses, groceries, or entertainment. So we'll do if expense dot category triple equals rent. Okay, and then we'll do else if expense dot category equals entertainment, and then at the very end we'll have else because there's only three options. Cool. So rent, what we'll do is now we will add the class. So if they're rent, I want to add this class rent expense. All right. So how do we do that? We'll do li, which again is the element we created on line 36, and we'll do class list dot add, and then all we gotta do is the string. So it says rent expense here. Okay, so we just have to put the name of the class exactly as it appears in the CSS. So now we'll add the class rent expense. Then for entertainment, to the class list we will add gross entertainment expense. And then for the final one, we'll add the li.classlist.add entertainment expense and then groceries expense. All right, so now when they're added, they'll have the class also added to them, and then we'll add them to the HTML file. Remember, append child is the point in which we actually take the element we created and add it to the HTML file. Let's see what we've got. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and put in oranges. We have bought some oranges for $2, and it's part of groceries. And notice how this is light green now. And then when we do entertainment, I bought a DVD player for $50 from a garage sale, I guess, and that's entertainment. Okay, notice how that's light blue. And then what we'll do is for what's groceries, entertainment, and rent, we'll do we sublet for $500 a month. And there we go. That's red. So those classes were added to these elements and then put onto the screen. So if you right click and inspect, you'll notice that they actually have the class groceries expense, right? So we literally, it's like we wrote this HTML, right? It's like we wrote a little bit HTML, like manipulated how we wanted it and then added it to the screen so it looked the way we wanted. So now it's a little bit easier for people to see like which expense belongs to what category visually by the color, which is kind of nice. Now, this is not, so just to review, we use class list, okay? The li here, the object here, li, is an HTML element, okay, a list item, and it has a class list, and we can add to the class list, and we put a string. The string has to be the same as the class in the CSS file. So this says rent expense, this says rent expense. You add the class to that element, and then the CSS will be applied to it. So that way you can pick and choose what CSS you want to use. Now the opposite of add is remove. So if you want to remove a class from the list, you can go ahead and do that by using remove. But this way we would be able to say, okay, cool. This is rent, then it has this class. This is entertainment, it has that class. So now we're using JavaScript to really leveraging JavaScript's ability to do logic to make our page really dynamic. So now the people can see the different expenses with different colors, so they pop out a bit more. We're making good progress so far, but we have a problem with our form. So if I put in an amount, but let's say I forget to do the description, like, oops, I forgot the description. So I hit add expense and it goes through. I have $25 for groceries, but I have absolutely no idea what that $25 was for because I forgot to write in the description. So we don't want to let the user do this. We want to have validation rules. Validation rules basically means, hey, I'm going to stop you, in your tracks to make certain that you are able to, that you have all the information I need before we actually go through with submitting the form. And right now we don't have any validation, so people can just write whatever the heck that they want. And that's not going to be good, so let's fix that. Let's go to our code, and there's a couple ways to do it. The first is using HTML5, has built-in attributes that you can use. So for example, here is the where I put in the input. Okay, for description, I'm going to put required. Okay, don't worry about this right now. I just put this in for the moment. If I put required here, and for the amount, I'll put required, and I'll put min equals 0.01, and step equals 0.01. Okay, I'll explain what step does in a moment, but let's take a look at this validation. Let's see what happens. Okay, so let's say I put in 25 bucks, but oops, I forgot my description. Please fill out this field. Notice how it didn't actually continue with the logic, right? I didn't actually like submit the form. The form is actually not being submitted. That submitted event is not firing because the rules that I've applied to the fields aren't there. Okay, so if I put like Nike, but then I forget to put an amount, please fill out this field. So I need a description, I need an amount. But let's say I put like -50. Okay, value must be greater than or equal to 0.01. So I need to put in at least 1 cent. I don't want my users to put in negative values or to put in 0, so I have that minimum. So I can put in a number and that's fine. Now you may be thinking, well, what about step? If we didn't have step, then step is actually telling the validator these are like the increments that I'm allowed. So if I do 0.01, I'm allowing like 1 penny increments so that they can put in any multiple of 1 penny. If I remove that, let's say I get rid of this step equals 0.01 and go back, then what's going to happen is I'll put like 3D printer, and then let's say I put 200 or whatever, and then I try to go through with it. Actually, let me make sure I reset. All right, Nike 200. Okay, please enter a valid value. So it's going to basically expect me to put like 1 cent after it, and I don't want that, so that's why I had the step in there. So I made sure that all the values that were valid were basically multiples of 1 cent. So that's why that step is necessary. Now, alternately, you can do your own validation, show your own messages, which we're going to talk about. But it's an either-or situation. If you're going to use the HTML5 validation, then that's what you're using. Okay, and it can be customized a little bit. It's a little bit harder, but like that's what you're using. If you're going to do your own validation, you have to write all your own JavaScript code. But it could be nice because you have way more control over what you're going to show. So we're going to do that. Go ahead and put a span tag underneath the description. It has an ID of description error and a class of error message. All right, so there's nothing in the span tag because when you first open the page, there's no errors. They haven't actually done anything with the form. Then you're going to remove the HTML5 validation stuff. Okay, so we're going to get rid of that because again, it's an either or kind of thing. So we've got this. Let's go ahead and add a style. I want the error message to look good. I want it to like pop out, so I don't want them to like miss it. I want the user to know that they did something wrong. So let's go ahead and do a class for error message. And the color will be red, and the font size is, I don't know, 0.9 rem. Margin top is 3 pixels, and then we'll do display none. Display none is a style that basically says don't display this thing, all right? Don't put it to the screen. And that makes sense. There's no error when you first open the page. We're going to kind of toggle the error. So basically what we'll do is in JavaScript, we'll say, hey, they didn't, put any information in for the description. Under those circumstances, then we will just display the error to the user. All right, let's do that in JavaScript. So here, I'm going to prevent default first. I'm going to target everything. That all needs to happen. And then this is part where I say I check that the description is valid. So I will basically say I'm going to create a target for this. This has description error as the ID. So I've already done it. I got get element by ID description error here. I made it a variable so we could target it. Remember, anything you want to do on the page, like any element you're going to do something with, hiding it, clicking it, hovering over with, submitting, it's good to target it first at the very top of your program, so that way like you can use it wherever the heck you want. All right, so I'm going to do description error, and we're going to check to see like, hey, is the description error like blank? Okay, and we're actually going to clear it out too. So what we'll do is we'll do description error dot text content is equal to blank, and then we'll do description error dot style dot display equals none. This is to reset everything. And you may notice, wait a second, Jonathan, where did the style thing come from? Well, before we were able to add classes to their class list. It was a property of an HTML element. It had a class list. We could add our classes to change the way things looked. Well, they also have a property for styles, and notice it's style.display. Why? Because display is one of the CSS properties. You could do style.margin-top, style.font size, style.color, anything that is a proper CSS property you can do. So I'm doing style.display is none. So this resets everything, and now we're going to check and see if the description dot value, we'll say it isn't even there. So like if it's like not even there, okay, or the description dot value dot trim is equal to blank. Like they either didn't type anything in or somehow it's blank. Okay, so somehow it's a blank string. So like they put in spaces, but they didn't actually type in words. So I wanted to make sure we handle that. So if we do, we'll say description error dot text content is going to be equal to please enter a description for the expense. Then we're going to show the error. We're going to do description error dot style dot display is equal to block. So now instead of being display none, it will be display block, and then it will show. All right, let's give this a try. So remember, we took out the required and all the other stuff from the HTML5 validation because we're doing our own. So let's give this a shot. We also, one thing I forgot, we need to put return here because we don't want to do any of the other logic afterwards if the form is invalid. So we don't want to add an expense or anything. We want to basically say stop. So I'll put return here because remember, return inside of a function basically is like stop doing what you're doing, we're done. The return is the last thing the function will do, and then anything afterwards is not going to happen. So let's go back and give this a try. Okay, I'll make sure it's in, and then we'll put 20. I will leave the description blank, and there we go. Please enter a description for the expense. Please enter. So I can't move forward until I put a description in. So I'll say, okay, cool, $20 for groceries, so like weekly groceries. $20 weekly groceries is amazing. Okay, and so we put it in. Okay, oops, I made a little mistake. It is not description.value. It already is the value. I forgot that was here. All right, so let's try this again. Okay, and I need it away from here. So basically, if there is no description, so my apologies. On line 25, it should be if there is no description, if it's null or undefined, and then trim and then blank string. All right, let's try this out. So change line 25 and then change line 26 to console log a description if you'd like, or we can just get rid of the console log. Okay, so let's go ahead and try this out. Okay, again, line 25, if I already have the value up here, so just go ahead and do not description or description.trim equals blank string. All right, we're going to put an amount but no description. All right, and then it gives me my my error message, and then I'll put groceries for my description, and then add my expense, and there we go. All right, so again, you can use the HTML5 validation, which will use the browser's built-in pop-up, and that can be customized at a little bit of elbow grease, or you can have your own custom validation where you show your own messages. Okay, but that will require you to use JavaScript. All right, let's go back over what we did. So we use the style property. Okay, so remember we had a class list for when we wanted to add or remove classes from a given HTML element. Well, we can do the same thing with style. Okay, it's not a list of styles, it's just style. So this style.display. So it'll be style.display, style. And pretty much any CSS like property, color, font size, margin type, like display, whatever you want. Okay, and so what we did was in JavaScript, I checked to see, hey, is the description blank? Is it like basically null, or is it a blank string when we trim it? If it is, here's the message for the description error. Use text content, and I did display block. So display block will make it appear. Originally the style was display none, but then I took the style and changed it to display block. And so now, as you can see, I've got the ability to add styles to things or change the style of something on the fly with JavaScript. All right, if you made it through the tutorial, congratulations. Now, we could do a gajillion and one extra things for this project. I just didn't want this to go on forever and ever. My real goal was to give you some basics in how to use vanilla JavaScript in order to manipulate the page. Now, I always feel like it's good to do these kind of things so you understand what JavaScript does as its basis. Later on, when you get more, experience under your belt, you'll take on things like Angular or React or Vue or maybe even Blazor, and you'll be able to actually use a framework that will make doing a lot of these things easier. Okay, so if this felt like a bit of a slog, that's because that's why React and Angular and things like that exist. But it is always very good to learn vanilla JavaScript so you understand what you're doing under the hood. Now, there are a ton of extra things we could do with this. For example, one of the big problems with this application is that every time I refresh, okay, everything is gone, right? So all of our hard work goes poof. So my options would be to either store my budget items into local storage, where I save them to the user's computer locally in their local storage section of their browser. Okay, so if you go into DevTools, you'll actually be able to see it. So let me see if I can go ahead and do that. Let's go to Application, and here you have local storage. All right, so this might be in a different spot depending on what browser you have, but you can store things locally. Or if you're feeling extra fancy, you can build an API and have it send data to the API to be saved long term. Of course, you'd have to build an API. You could do that with just about any language nowadays, and then that would be a way in which you could store the data long term. We could do a lot of other fancier things with validation. We could do a lot of fancier things with, like, for example, the way things look. Maybe I would like to show a total of all of my different categories, like how much money am I spending. I could ask the user to tell me what is their target budget for the month, and then tell them whether or not they're over or under, change the CSS of the page to do so, whether they're over or under. So what I'd love for you to do is actually take this project and go wild with it. Okay, get it working, and then see what extra things you might want to add to it, okay, that would make it a lot more useful and fun for you. Change the way, like, the screen looks, move stuff around. Maybe have a pie chart, use Chart.js, which is a library to add charts, and make a pie graph showing people's expenses. There's a lot of things you could do, but the main thing is, again, I wanted to kind of go over that there's a flow to things, right? So first, you're going to target everything, okay, that you're going to work with. Input boxes, drop downs, buttons, forms, error, like span tags with your error messages. Anything you predict that the user is going to either, like, it's going to change based on the user doing something or the user directly interacts with. I would target all of those things, and you know how to target. You can do get element by ID, you can use query selector, you can target them by their class name, you can do all kinds of stuff, all right? So you're able to target the tags that you are going to be working with using either by their class, okay, by what kind of tag they are, or their ID. And so you target everything you're going to need, all right? And then you can add event listeners. Event listeners are going to attach to one of the things you targeted, and they're going to sit there and they're going to listen and wait for the user to do something. Click a button, submit a form, double click something, type something in. Anything that the user does with their keyboard or their mouse, all right, that they can, or maybe with like a sound recorder, who knows? There's a bunch of stuff you can do with events. And you're going to make event listeners to listen for those events. You're going to write functions that will respond, okay, to those events happening. And that's where your JavaScript, your logic is going to come in. So here I had a submit event. And then when the person submits it, I grabbed all the data from the form. I did a little bit of validation. I created an object with their data, and then I was able to push it to this array of expenses. Okay, we also learned how to manipulate classes. So you can add classes by using classlist.add or classlist.remove. We also learned how to create element. Okay, this is very, very powerful. We're actually able to create an HTML tag in code, and we can like mold it, okay, to whatever we want. Add classes, remove classes, change its text content, change its HTML. And so we can actually use JavaScript to do all this, to apply logic to our page. We also learned how to append a child. So remember, we have this UL tag here, and inside the UL tag are going to be list item tags, which are going to be children. And so because of that, we use append child to literally dynamically change the HTML on the screen to add things as we added expenses. So we had a lot of things to do here, a lot of power. All right, and this is only scratching the surface of what you can do with vanilla JavaScript and manipulating the DOM, the document object model, to do what you want to do. So what I would love is for people to take this base code and go wild with it and show me what you did. Like, show me what new things you were able to do and what you learned. Because building projects is how you really get better at programming. It's how you see how everything kind of comes together. All right, learning things individually is fine, but putting them together to actually perform a task, in my personal view, helps you to learn that much better. All right, so I hope you enjoyed this tutorial. Again, there's so much more you can do. I just wanted to do something basic with vanilla JavaScript. And if you enjoyed it, why don't you head on over to Coding Your Career, and there's going to be like way more learning to be had there. All right, my name is Jonathan Hopp, and I hope you enjoyed the video.